Okay, so now that we've got our leg bones in place, let's spend a minute and discuss how we're going to set up the modified stretchy IK on our leg. That's the stretchy IK that will give us the manual stretch in addition to the automatic stretch, and also give us the ability to lock the stretchiness on our leg. So I'm going to jump over to the whiteboard and let's draw out our simple leg bone setup. So we have our upper leg and our lower leg. We know that we can apply the stretchy IK tool to these leg bones, and that will create IK on those leg bones and give us an IK handle, where if we move that IK handle down, eventually we will reach the end of the original length of the bones. So somewhere around here we'd reach the end of the original lengths of the bones, and if we were to move the IK handle further than this point, our bones are going to stretch to reach the new location of the IK handle. So this is what we get with our stretchy IK tool at the moment. It'd be really nice to come in and give manual stretching ability of the upper leg and manual stretching ability of the lower leg. So what we can do, we can add a parameter to our upper leg and to our lower leg bones, and that parameter will be called IK stretch. Now we're going to lock this parameter at a minimum of 1, so we're going to lock at a minimum of 1, and we'll leave it unlocked at the maximum of 10. That means we cannot shrink our leg. We have our set leg length, but we can stretch our leg if we wish from that point manually on both the upper leg and the lower leg. If we were to take this parameter and multiply it in by our bone length, that means that we'd be scaling up that final bone length. However, just doing that is going to cause some problems. Let's think about what's going on here. For those of you who followed along with Technical Rigging 4 and saw the stretchy IK setup, you know that we are comparing the original length of both bones to the distance between our start and end, the start of the bone chain and where our end effector is, to work out if we need to scale. Again, that's looking at the original length of the bones, not the current length of the bones. That means if we were to come in and we had something that looked like this, where we just hit the end point of that IK, so that was the end limits of our original bone chain. If we were to stretch out our bones, obviously if these bones get longer, we can start to bend our knee, but we're still sat here right at the end of that original limit. That means if we were to bring the IK handle any lower than this, our stretchy IK automated setup is going to kick in and start stretching these bones. That means even though our bones are actually sat out like so, and they are not needed to be stretched yet, they will stretch. So as well as being repositioned based on the IK handle moving, they're also going to get stretched further by the fact that our IK handle has moved beyond the original length of our bone chain. This is undesirable. You can see from this that what we need to do is have that automated stretch not look at the original length of the bone chain, but look at the original length of the bone chain multiplied by that IK stretch parameter. That means we can jump in and we can create a new parameter, and we can have that parameter set to look at our original length and multiply it by our IK stretch length, and then in our stretch ratio, the parameter that is set up to drive the stretching, the automated stretching based on the distance between the start and our end effector compared to the length of our original bones, we can now compare that to the length of our IK stretched bones, and that will give us the correct functionality. It doesn't, however, give us the locking ability that we desire for this leg setup. So what we really want is some kind of lock type parameter. So we can create a lock parameter, and I'm going to say for all of our stretchy lock parameters, the 0 means that we're going to have no stretch, and 1 means that we're going to have 100% stretch. That means if we set this parameter to 0, our IK stretch parameters will have no effect, and our automated stretch based on our IK handle will have no effect. However, if we set this parameter up to a value of 1, all of those things will kick in and will have stretchiness. So this will allow us to enable and disable and blend between stretchiness of our bones. However, how are we going to set this up? Well, we can use linear interpolation to set this up. We know that with a value of 0 on that parameter, we want that to give us a stretch ratio, if you will, of 1. 1 times our original bone length. No stretching taking place. However, with a value of 1 on that parameter, we want to have our stretch ratio, that is the automated stretch ratio of how much do I need to stretch based on the position of the end effector, multiplied by the manual stretch for our current bones. So if we take our stretch ratio, multiply it by that manual stretch, that is the IK stretch for our current bone, that is going to give us the value that we want to multiply by our initial bone length when we have 100% stretch. We can linearly interpolate between these values, and that will allow us to linearly interpolate between a value of 1 and a value of stretch ratio multiplied by our manual stretch, or our IK stretch, if you will. And then if we take the result of that interpolation and multiply that by our initial bone length, that will give us the resulting bone length that we want for our stretched bones. So how do we go about linear interpolation? Well, this 0 to 1 value is our parameter. That is going to be what I'm going to refer to as t. So that is t. And if we have 1 minus t times our first value, this is our first value, and we add to that t times our second value, this is our second value, that will linearly interpolate between our first value and our second value as our number on our parameter goes from 0 to 1. So what that will look like in terms of an expression will be something like this. We're going to have 1 minus our lock parameter, that is a numerical 1. So 1 minus our lock parameter multiplied by a value of 1. And we know that really multiplying by a value of 1 is just itself, so we don't need to include that. And we can add to that t times value 2. Well, t is our log, so we're going to add to that our log and multiply our log by our stretch ratio. So multiply log by our stretch ratio multiplied by our manual stretch, or in this case indeed our IK stretch. So multiplied by our IK stretch. So this will give us the resulting stretch ratio, if you like. We can take the entirety of this and multiply that by our I length. That is a parameter set up automatically by the stretchy IK that recalls the value of the bone length when we set up stretchy IK on that bone length. So that is the original length of the bones, the length of the bones as they exist now. If we were to take that expression that we've just set up here and multiply that expression in by our initial length, that's going to give us the resulting length that we need based on both our IK stretch, our stretch ratio, and whether we're allowing stretchiness or not allowing stretchiness based on that log parameter. So with that, that's a look at how we're going to go ahead and set up the stretchy IK system on our leg. In the next video, we'll turn around and actually implement this in Houdini. Thanks a lot.